all these ideas, but am I going to execute it? So we're just going to shake it out. Oh,
Indeed.
oh, great.
All right, amazing. Thank you for that, Kayla. Okay, so one of the first steps that you all are going to be taking, that most of you are going to be taking, is actually creating flyers. So most of you will be hosting events, bringing your neighbors together, and I want to help you create amazing flyers. So let's dive into those best practices. My first tip is orient towards handmade and handwritten. So this is Tessa's handwritten and I think she had a neighbor of hers that she knew do these watercolor paintings. So this is probably the cutest flyer we have in the cohort of examples. But I think something to talk about is like if you've ever received a handwritten letter, if you've ever received a children's drawing, you know how precious it becomes. If you compare that to an overly branded piece of junk mail, you're probably going to throw the junk mail in the trash, but you're probably going to put the children's drawing on your fridge. And so if you have a flyer that looks like a children's drawing, because it is, or even an adult's drawing that's drawing bad, it's probably going to go on the fridge, and it's probably going to be something that people actually care enough to look at again and again. I also want to just highlight black and white is totally fine. Printing these flyers might become really, really expensive with ink, so don't be afraid to use black and white. This is one of Shawnee's, you can see there's Shawnee, one of her flyers. They put 2 different events on this flyer, and it's got a children's drawing, and you can see she's actually cut out a drawing that she had a kid do. And then she wrote out the title, the logistics, RSVP to this person's number, only adults can come, and then instructions to RSVP, yeah, and the whole second thing. Join our email list, call Shawnee is all on there. So it's just an example. Here's another one. This is one of the flyers that my partner John and I put out. This is actually a 1/4 page size. And what we did is we were like having fun with Canva with this one, Newland Winter Dinner Party. And I've actually had us handwrite sticky notes inviting people to come. We put those on top of it. I didn't take a picture of it originally, so I just kind of did this up for you. But it turned out that when we hosted this was our like second event in our neighborhood, in our building, a lot of people said that it was the handwritten sticky note that made them come. Just to prove to you, like, handwriting makes a difference. Okay, so then I kind of broke it out here.
There's also a hack you can use here. I did my flyers by handwriting, but then I photocopied them. So it was obviously handwritten, but then photocopied.
Exactly. Here's another example from Sharon O'Neill, who lives in Perth and was in the last cohort in Shawnee's group, so 2 Aussie ladies. And Sharon really just took the Shawnee Graham West Beaky Bunch case study and just replicated every detail of it. So here's hers. I think she actually just drew this, and she's like, yeah, it's gonna look like a child drew it, but it's actually just an adult who doesn't have a lot of drawing ability. And so, children's looking drawing, title, explanation. Come along to a casual picnic, morning tea to meet others who live in our area, smiley face. She did this little drawing where it's all located, instructions to RSVP. So I was telling you, Anne, do the QR code and also like RSVP by phone, Sharon at number. So it's important to call out the tech savvy people who are, below the age of 40 will know how to do a QR code most of the time. But people above the age of 40 probably won't know how to do a QR code to no fault of their own. So you want to have an alternative way of RSVPing by phone or by email. And just to show you how this event went, here's that event. This is what was generated out of that flyer. So pretty exciting. Not being perfect and looking like a normal human being made the flyer I find is actually quite endearing. Um, so don't be afraid to just index on humanness. We've got a doc of other flyer examples, and I'm going to share it in the chat right now. So you'll be able to see all kinds of examples. Ooh, and Estelle's got some interesting photos in here. Cute. Okay, so you can look into more examples of that sort of thing. I also want to share that I recommend using masking tape because you don't want to pull the paint off of someone's door. So just a little tactic there. If you live in a place where people speak different languages, you may want to consider having an English version and a different language. So Kati, who lives in Portugal, she is a native German speaker who married an American, and they both live in Portugal. And so they made an English version and a Portuguese version, and they used like AI to make these flyers themselves. I'll also just call out, like, make your invitation stand out. This is Jenny Gaunt, who also lives in Australia, and she's in a very rural area. So it'd be very hard with all these gates and, people who live on large acreages of property for her to actually go knock on a door. So instead, she's like, well, I'm not allowed legally to put a flyer in someone's mailbox, so I'll tie it to someone's like opening gate, but I'm going to put a little sprig of rosemary or a little flower and some tulle and make this look really sweet so it's compelling and it feels interesting to them. So those are just some things to consider. Any questions, thoughts hearing all of this? No? Okay. Show me with your body, like, sounds good? Are you getting inspiration, making sense? Okay, awesome. All right.
I like the sticky note with your name and phone number, because people won't usually keep an 8.5 and 11 around, but a little sticky note reminds them what it is, and that they will stick on the refrigerator.
Yep, and, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Thank you.
Make a note that regular masking tape after 1 day of sun will permanently bond to the paint. The tan masking tape is a permanent. So get the masking tape that's either the green or the blue. Those are removable up to 2 weeks. I'm just telling you that from a painter's background. If you've ever had brown masking tape in the sun for 1 day, it will not come off of your bumper of your car or the paint on your house.
All right, remember that, everybody.
The removable Scotch tape will usually come off pretty easily.
Perfect.
What do they call it? The satin removable.
Good to know. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. Okay, so for our next lesson, this is on creating culture generally, but also at your first event. So my first recommendation is have fun. Now, we've all heard this. This is kind of obvious, but I think it's really important for you to actually design events, not that you think you should do, not that you think people will like, but that you yourself would actually have a good time at. That if your neighbor invited you to that event, you'd be like, oh, hell yeah, I'm there. That sounds like a great time. Because if you're having a good time, everyone else is probably also going to have a good time. And you as a leader represent a path to leadership that looks like fun. So if Kirsten is the vice president of the Coronado Neighborhood Association and she's hating life, I doubt people are going to be volunteering to take up that role. But if Kirsten's actually designing for herself to have the most enjoyable time, and because she's choosing to do things that are actually an extension of what she loves most about her neighborhood, people are going to be far more excited to join her because they're seeing how much fun she has. So it's both practical and just like essential to your life force that the choices you make actually boil down to you having a good time. And I think that's kind of a hard thing for us to grok sometimes. But I just really want you to be like, how can I handle this moment so that I'm actually not hosting this for everybody else, but I'm including myself in the experience I want to be having too. Does that make sense? Your joy is actually what's going to create the kind of culture you want to see in your neighborhood. Okay, and to that point, I want to just throw in the idea of letting go of control, see where it goes. So an example of this is the poster board that Shawnee put out at her very first event, where she wanted to see what kind of name should we have for this beautiful neighborhood social group we're creating. And she was like, West Beaky what? And she wanted it to be West Beaky Web. She just thought that would be so cool, West Beaky Web. And so she wrote West Beaky Friends, West Beaky Web, and then she had a few other people add. And everyone loved West Beaky Bunch. And it was a child that suggested that name. And she was actually a little butthurt about it not being her first choice, which is hilarious. But she let go of control and she let the group genius come in. And that's the thing here. Of course we want to control outcomes. Of course we want the best for the situation. But the truth is we actually can't control much of anything in this world. And so if you want something that other people pick up, that other people want to co-create with you, there has to be room for them to engage. There has to be room for them to lead. And if you're trying to hold everything tightly, it's not going to work. So I just want to throw this out there that, like, I think if you're not having fun, it's likely that some part of you wants to control an outcome. And if you can lean into surrendering and opening to not knowing what's going to happen next, you might find that someone else steps in and gives their gifts in an interesting way. Does that resonate? Does that make sense? I will admit that is something that I have dealt with over and over and over again. And only in the last year have I just let things go. And then I see people actually step up in that vacuum of control. Okay, so these are what's called network maps. And I want to just convey an important idea here. So this is called a hub and spoke network. If you imagine a bicycle wheel, there's you at the center, and you know all your neighbors. Now that sounds like a good idea, but actually what we want, success in terms of community building, is a well-connected neighborhood. So if this hub in the middle is Alex Zoo, and Alex knows everybody, it sounds great. And Alex seems to know everybody right now. But actually, Alex can't be the one that everyone goes to for help if Alex wants a truly resilient network. Instead, Alex's job is to help a ton of neighbors, a ton of friends build strong bonds with each other. So I just want to remind you that this isn't about, even though many of you are taking this course because you want to make more friends and you want to have a beautiful network surrounding children and all of that, if you're just thinking about do I know everyone, then we don't have a resilient network. But if you can step back and facilitate other neighbors meeting each other and building bonds, that's success. I remember one of the park picnics we held in Boulder, there were two elderly women who came, and they just talked about knitting the whole time. And I thought, I should go talk about knitting with them, but I didn't really want to. And so they talked about knitting, and now they're in the same knitting group. And that's the web being woven. And I didn't have to actually be there to introduce them, but now they're more connected just because I hosted an event and they got to be together and meet each other. So that's just something to consider. Shawnee has this another way of explaining this. She says, if you have a spider web and all of the points are only connected at one, or all the lengths of the web are connected at one point, anyone can just slap that spider web away. But if all the points on the spider web are really, really, really well connected, you're not going to break that spider web as easily. So there's that. I've said this before, hand out jobs. Some people might find it a little difficult, again, with the letting go of control, to ask people to help. It may feel like a burden, but I want to really encourage you to consider that you're not giving someone the burden of a task, you're giving someone a sense of belonging by including them in what you're building and making them feel like they were a part of it. So that's a big one. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'd love for one of us to let's see, how about Anne? I know that you're planning your event. Could you share some of the jobs that you have in mind? And I'd love for the rest of the group to like brainstorm some other jobs that other people could do at your event.
My event's going to be outside in the park. So I'm thinking when I'm like door knocking, if people volunteer to help, I'm going to say, yes, can you bring a picnic blanket? Can you bring an extra chair? Can you bring some snacks? And then when we get there, I want to have some kind of big whiteboard set up where people can like put post-it notes or write or a sheet or something. So I might have somebody help me set that up, or maybe ask somebody if they have one because I don't have any of those things. And then I want to do some kind of a bingo situation, like I think Shawnee did, and maybe have other people help like pass out the bingo cards to new people who arrive. That's what I have so far.
So what are some other jobs that Anne might give out just as a little brainstorming exercise?
Ooh, welcomer, to have somebody noticing when people arrive, to be like the first person to go up and give a hug or a hello or so you have like your first touch point person.
Yeah, Rotary meetings, we have a greeter. Somebody's designated greeter each week, and it just makes everybody feel welcome. If somebody's having a bad day, they're still making it to the meeting, they feel welcomed. A joke master.
I like to assign a vibe checker where I like tell somebody to just kind of keep an eye on the vibe, and if they notice that somebody feels a little bit left out, be like, hey, I need you on team compassion. If you notice that somebody's a little left out, are you willing to like be the person that checks in with them? And it's cool giving them, like, you see how I'm doing like little names, like the vibe checker, team compassion. People love identification when it comes with like, oh, I'm a certain role that's kind of cool. There's a name for it. There's a theme for it.
Totally. Yeah, there's more we can say there, but I think I'll just move on. Okay, and then a few thoughts about what to do at your first event. So I pitched this in our homework doc from last week, but having a board where people can brainstorm future events. This is the board that was at Shawnee's very first event. And what she did is she wrote a few of her ideas, and then she's actually been known to like write with her right hand and then write in a different pen with her left hand, so it just looks like completely different handwriting. And so she's basically like priming the pool of it looking like many people are already writing. And you could do this with the check marks of people kind of saying like, oh, I like that idea. You could also have someone write an idea and put their name by it so that it says somebody's actually volunteering to do this thing. So that's interesting. Next, you could have a big map of your neighborhood. This is a map of the Evergreen Park neighborhood in Palo Alto, California. We have a case study I'm in the midst of editing, but I think at their original event they had a giant poster of this, and instead of having the unit numbers so big, they made more room for people to actually write their names and phone numbers onto their units, so that by the end of it they could all take a picture of it and be like, okay, now we all have each other's phone numbers and we know where each other lives. So that's a fun way for people to actually visualize who's in the room, who's at the event, who's here. And then I recommend you have a think on whether or not you'd like to say anything at the event. Like, do you want to give a short speech that frames what you're doing together? So you might be like, hi, welcome everybody. Like, we are doing this to bring neighbors together. I feel so heartened that you're all here, that sort of thing. This is for the neighbors in our neighborhood. And something Shawnee mentioned that I think is important to say is like, name that this event can now go wherever we want. Like, what do we want to do together? And framing like the different activities as this shared co-created thing. At my first event with my neighbors, I literally stood up in front of all them, said something akin to what I just said to you. And then I was like, my intention is that we create this like beautiful adult dorm vibe in this apartment building. And like, I'd love to know if any of you want to host events and join in creating that kind of culture. And then people just like piped up and said, yeah, I'd be open to hosting an event. And so sort of like really making your intentions known publicly with the group can be huge. Okay, so I'll stop there. Are there any